Hello, my name is Bryan Robb, and today I'll be talking about language in France and how it's changed. So, originally, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, way back, just before I was alive, just before I was born actually, there were many languages in France, and they all come from different tribes. Every region had their own language that came from a tribe, from Alsatian and Alsace, Bretagne and just Normandy and Brittany region, or Provence down on the Mediterranean. Each one was influenced by its own, by its own region. Alsace, very Germanic, just on the border with Germany. Provence, oddly enough, or Provence was Italian with a large Italian influence, but oddly enough, Bretagne over in the northwest had a very high Celtic influence. Now, when the Romans came along and united the entire Mediterranean under one flag, the Roman flag, many of these languages began to cease to exist as people began to speak Latin. And even though these languages were so different from Latin, some of them did survive. Now, let's jump ahead. When the Roman Empire fell, this Latin stayed behind and influenced heavily the languages of the future, French. But many of these regional languages survived and did not cease to exist. In 1066, many of y'all might know, was when William the Conqueror made his journey over to England. Although this did not directly influence the French language, it did cause our English we speak today to be heavily influenced by French and the French culture and the language altogether. Now, the French language was also influenced by a variety of factors. One of the main factors is the Germans. The Germans have spent their time picking on the French, just as the French have spent their time picking on the Germans. And from Bismarck to Hitler, many German flags have gone through Paris. And because of this, many regions of France, primarily over by Germany, have a strong German influence. But, it's still French, and we're still happy to have it to be French. Today, however, many of these languages cease to exist. The majority of them they don't. However, Alsatian still exists, Provençal still exists, and Bretagne still exists. Bretagne, excuse me, it's very hard to pronounce. Probably is one of the more long-lasting ones, as many of the signposts over there in the region are in France and the local regional language, which if you were to hear someone speak the language, if a French person were to hear you speak Alsatian, Provençal, one of these languages, there's a very good chance they couldn't understand a word they're saying. They're just so different. Now, although most of these languages exist, many of them are dying out. Many of the adults, grandparents know these languages, but the kids simply aren't learning them. But today, in the coming days and coming weeks, there might be a vote within the French Parliament that they will allow these languages to actually be taught in schools because they're considered part of the history of France. And who knows, maybe they'll come back. But for now, they speak French, which might surprise you. Thank you.